Hello, I'm Richard Hoover, and this is SatTV Week. Now, I'm pleased to be joined by Tony Radford of Advantech Wireless. Tony, pleasure to see you again. We've spoken many, many times.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's always an excellent opportunity to bloviate in front of a couple of hundred people, maybe. Right.
Well, let's hope for a little bit more today.
Okay.
Tony, you're an old head in this market. What are the reasons to be cheerful about the satellite industry at the moment?
Well, I think there's reasons for some to be happy and probably reasons for some to be sad. It just depends on where you are in the marketplace. For us, I guess the beauty about being where we at Advantech are is we're meat and potatoes, right? We supply, some of the brute force hardware that's required to do anything you're going to do in space, right? But clearly there are a lot of crazy things going on in orbit right now with the inclusion of the main three orbital paths, right? We see Viasat's launching more of their GeoBirds. We've got people hooking up like what is it? Eutelsat getting with OneWeb, and of course, Viasat's getting with Inmarsat. You see these consortiums, coming together, and each, kind of has a different value proposition, but clearly each of these teams is looking at, providing hybrid solutions as being a way to compete in a pretty rabid marketplace, right? I mean, all this, all these things going on, and more constellations, to launch. So it looks to me like it may be kind of brutal from the supply standpoint, right? I mean, if your main business is spewing internet to the masses, you got SpaceLink out there, just pumping enormous amounts of money and clearly making some great progress, at putting a blanket, around our little planet, to do the thing. So, wherever you fit in that, if your service, the type of service that you provide, or your position in the in the industry as a whole, dovetails with what's going on, that's great. But I'm sure there are some folks that are probably a little concerned about, how the rapid changes in our industry are going to impact their individual business plans, right?
But let's talk about this LEO bit. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon of LEO, the amount of money that's being pumped into it. Not all are going to be a success. We've
That's
already
right.
seen some having to be bailed out. Is there going to be the market there for all of these people jumping on LEO?
You know, I don't know. Hey, look, it's obviously the question of the year. If nothing else, I spent time at satellite, like most of us did, and talking to. We've got a lot of customers. Advantech, obviously, we've been around for a really long time, and our product is used by pretty much everybody. Take a Starlink, for example. It's not just the fact that that Musk is pumping a lot of money into it. The guy's having some great successes. I mean, we've got thousands of birds in orbit now, which a few years ago we old Satcom hacks would have said, break, that's not possible. But they've done all that, and aside from just having a lot of hardware in space, I mean, look at the model they're putting together. They build their own birds, they launch their own birds, right? They control everything themselves. They're effectively vertically integrated. I look at it as Starlink could be to the Satcom industry what Walmart is to retail. I mean, these guys are a one-stop shop, and there's a big part of the industry that serves as a middle player, right? You've got the satellite provider up there, and then you've got the services required on the ground, and they put the link together in the middle. The different services, all the efforts that are associated with providing a service like that, installing hardware, doing whatever, and Starlink stands to possibly negate a lot of the middleman activity that we've all known as a core part of our industry forever, right? So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. And then Amazon's going to do their thing. I guess they're stepping right into the same program, right?
But Tony, you're talking about the value chain here, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, the value chain.
But surely, when people start interfering with the value chain, there's casualties. There's always casualties along the line.
Yes. Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it. I've made comments on some of our previous discussions that, look at a company like ours. I mean, we sell to everybody that we can. Obviously, we've got a very broad portfolio. We address, different parts of the market. But, and just kind of like a little pitch here, and maybe on track, maybe a little tangential, and that is that, we can address the enterprise market. We've got low power products that are more, aimed at that part of the industry. But, for us, addressing enterprise is like, it's like hunting squirrels. It takes a whole sack full to make a meal, and mostly what you got is fur and bones. There's not a whole lot of meat on it, So we don't angle into that part of the market. For us, if that's all we did, we could be a casualty in all of this. But fortunately, that's not what we do. It's heavily competed, and the way some of these, particularly the LEO projects, go off is they have their own what do you call it, dedicated service provider. So it does effectively take chunks out of the industry. It takes chunks out of the business, right? It's not free market, free enterprise anymore. It's whoever they cozied up with when they designed and launched their program. So that I would think that would have somewhat of an effect, because if LEO takes out some geo services, then that creates a paradigm shift in in how the market facilitates itself, right?
We've always, over the years, Tony, been used to the big, massive operators. How much longer can that last? How much longer can these operators?
You're talking about like all the guys that are flying all the satellites, the guys that have been around forever, back when we were kids.
Yeah.
The big three or the big four, whatever it is now. Hey, look, they're all good customers of mine. But I look at, poor guys in some respects. A lot of them have been acquired, and they've been, been purchased by these equity outfits, and they've been bought and sold. They got to be pretty heavily leveraged. It's got to be a really tough business, and depending on how you're lined up, like I was talking a minute ago, you've got like O3B with their MEO stuff. They got acquired by SES with their geo stuff. You got OneWeb with their LEO stuff, hooking up with Eutelsat and their geo stuff. It's really kind of mind-boggling, and each one has done something different, right? I mean, Eutelsat, they get pulled into the SES O3B deal, and then you've got the other guys that have teamed up the way that they have, Viasat with their Inmarsat. They've really kind of right. Am I seeing it wrong? It's like they've established different ways of addressing their respective marketplaces, right? If you believe that LEO, MEO, and GEO, they have different nuances. They each do things better and worse than the other three, right? They're clear differentiators between what the three orbital paths can actually provide, right? And each one does something great. And right. So depending on how you lined up your consortium, I would think would have some impact on how successful you'll be, over the course of time. Right.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's change track slightly. We're seeing all of this investment. We're seeing potential tie-ups. We're seeing all these LEO constellations. Is the customer actually going to benefit? What is the customer going to sit there at the end of the day? Is he going to be sitting there saying, I've got lower pricing, I've got this high speed connectivity, or is he just going to be looking at multiples of constellations going, I have no idea what went on?
Well, you know that the vast majority of the world has no idea what we do for a living, right? All they see is the glitzy stuff. You know, Elon's a fabulous spokesperson, but he gets so mired in the politics of Twitter and gasless cars and all that stuff. No, I think, and hey, look, I've had conversations with people that I know, just I mean, outside of the industry, particularly people that are. We've been looking for property. We're trying to kind of move out away from the city a little bit more. And the further you move from a big municipality, the more scarce services become. So it gets into and everybody has to have internet, and everybody who's working at home needs some reliable, relatively high bandwidth internet, right? Well, fiber goes so far. Now you've got the Viasat service, you've got the Starlink service, and kind of what I'm hearing is. Let's just say, for example, Starlink. I talked to some people this past weekend that had, that had moved into the Starlink camp, and they were very happy with it. All they knew was, hey, Starlink is providing us with a great service. I've got great upload and download speeds. It goes to crap when it rains, but I'll deal with it, right? And you talk about MEO and LEO and GEO and some of these big players, they have no idea what you're talking about. All I know is I've got to have internet, and this is not just maybe necessarily the absolute cheapest, but I have to have some level of QoS before I can function, right? But I think it gets down to that. It's for the most part, it's a commercial play until you get into, say, the cruise line industry. Right now, when you're talking mobile, the in-flight entertainment stuff and the stuff that goes at sea, now you're getting into a whole different game here, right? Now you've got you've got vehicles, whether they're airborne, shipboard, whatever, that are moving along great distances. They're moving in and out of beams. They're moving in and out of SATCOM, footprints, whatever. So they typically have to have a pretty elaborate multi-beam or more or less multi-band terminals to address whatever bird they're going to be utilizing when they get into the Indian Ocean or whatever, right? But in the case of a LEO program, if it's just a program that delivers no matter where you are on the planet for all intents purposes, and you never have to leave the company, you never have to leave the constellation. I don't know if the handoffs and all that kind of stuff work. That may be a huge a commercial benefit that's driven solely by where their orbit is. I mean, how they're managing their constellation, and how it all plays, how close the birds are together. No dropouts in between. Handoffs. So I think there's in some ways the way that the technology is congealing and separating. It's going to get to a point where mostly the industrial people, the folks that know exactly what we're doing, and the ones that have the expertise, and the depth to look at what all the technology plays are. I think it's going to get real interesting, right? I mean, O3V has been in the MEO game for a really long time, and I'm sure they have a nice dedicated customer base that needs exactly what their MEO does for them. Maybe GEO and LEO doesn't work. I don't know. I don't know, but it is kind of cool that we're at the point where you can actually try to look and understand what the network looks like. Why would I choose LEO over MEO over GEO? Chances are there could very well be a reason why you would do that. And there's all these big brands come together and have hybrid solutions and all. Now they're going to have to create marketing models, marketing vehicles that educate the customer base, the population, on why you would choose this. And hey, look, when they get, I'm not real clear on this. I think it's kind of a cool future. Reality is all this optical laser stuff where they're going to connect MEO to MEO links in space and MEO to GEO links in space. Man, that's going to create a whole new level of services. And I hear that they're moving enormous amounts of bandwidth in between birds. You're cutting out ground stations. Wow, it's kind of cool stuff for what little I know about it.
You mentioned ground stations. Look, everything we've talked about so far is the sexy part of the satellite industry. It's space. It's a big bird flying around. It's a small bird flying around.
Yep.
How do you the ground segment manufacturers, the component manufacturers, it's critical to the satellite network, but it's not sexy, is it?
No, it is not.
How do you get that out there that it is a critical part of a network?
Well, I think that the stuff that happens on the ground is a complete a byproduct of what's in space. It's slave to what's happening in space, right? All of our stuff on the ground has to synchronize perfectly with whatever we're dealing with. If it's LEO, then antennas have to move back and forth really fast, or they have to delve into a flat plate, beam steer, kind of a deal. Whatever they do in space, it has a great impact on what we do on the ground. Our amplifiers, they have to sync up. If everything goes Ka, then we have to have Ka amplifiers, right? It's pretty much drives everything. But yeah, it's the antenna part that's the most interesting and probably the most impact. I mean, look at it this way. Back in the 70s and 80s, when I was out building earth stations, right, we had C-band birds only. Most of it was video broadcast. That was 90% of the commercial SATCOM market was video broadcast, right? So we're building 7 meter, 10 meter, 11 meter, 12 meter, 13 meter antennas for as low as you could go to provide some video services with footprints that were giant, and they were faint. I mean, their downlink ERP was so low, you had that defining what we did, as an earth station industry, if you want to call it that. But yeah, now the birds are hotter. The antennas have been shrinking like crazy. The satellites are parked closer together. Now the antennas have to be much more precise than they used to be. We used to put them together with a block of wood and a hammer. Now you have to have theodolites and all these precision alignment tools just to get the things to work, right? When I think back on my my life, I got 43 years in this industry, and when I was a young guy, healthy young guy, climbing all over antennas and building all this stuff for HBO and ESPN and Discovery and Boardwalk and baseball and you name it, hundreds of TV stations. Doing this stuff was really great, and the antenna was my favorite part. Pulling 600 pounds of torque on a big clicker, and making controls work and tracking sometimes, right? It was all cool stuff. And but even when I was doing it, I watched, an 11 meter became a 7 meter, and a 7 meter became a 4.5 meter, and a 4.5 meter became a 3.8 meter. Then it became a 2.4 meter, and I just said, screw this, and I moved out. This is no longer a challenge. And it's getting even smaller. Now it's sub-meter. Now that we're all up in K band and whatever happens beyond that, it's been incredibly impactful on ground station architecture, what's going on in space. And it isn't going to change, now that we're going to have all these thousands and thousands and thousands of LEO birds. You can't do anything with a fixed 7 meter antenna that's going to do you any good with LEO, right? So you'll have, I guess, earth stations that are designed for geostationary satellites, and then you'll have the LEO MEO stuff that's always moving. It's but it's never going to be as fun as it was 30 years ago. No way.
So let me pick you up on a couple of points there. You've talked about these thousands of satellites in space. Now, if we compare that to the amount of debris that's already running around in space, who's going to pay for the cleanup?
I don't know how you do that. I did not know how you do that. I mean, Mark Dangberg, I know he had taken a position some little while back. I think I watched a little piece that he did where he, to him, collisions were a big deal. I mean, the idea of potential collisions in space, I think he had touted on one of his little deals that was really critical. Of course, I consider Mark as 1,000 times more intelligent than me, and he's out there designing satellites and getting them launched. So, clearly it's a big concern to some folks. I'm not smart enough to know one way or the other if they're really far enough apart. You see these maps. I've seen them on social media where they'll show an indication of all the commercial aircraft that are flying over the United States, for example, at any point in time, and it just looks like you drop something in a bed of fire ants, and it's just completely ants. But that's really not the way it is. If you blow the U.S. out, and scale it to the size of an airplane, it doesn't look like that at all. So I don't know. Would the ITU and the FCC, would they grant guys like Musk and Bezos that want to put tens of thousands of satellites in orbit? Would they grant all of that if there really was a serious, significant argument that they're all going to be slamming each other? Maybe. I hate to think so.
Well, you would hope not, but I mean, the analysts are talking about there is a problem. Somebody's got to pay for it. Somebody's got to clean it up.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people say it's the space agency's job to pay for it. Well, we know that's never going to happen. It's going to have to go into the private. But it's a model that just seems so far away in the future, going up there and cleaning all this stuff away.
I know. And I see on like LinkedIn, I see companies that tout that they're creating dredges to pull things out of space, and I don't know, but for a long time it's going to be hype. People like you're saying, who's going to pay for it? Well, you try to get investors to pay for it. I'm going to have a space junk removal incorporated, and if I can convince you that these satellites are going to, when they decay, they're going to start falling on school buses and falling into daycares and all this stuff, then it will create this huge need for the service, and people will start investing in it, and it probably really won't do anything. It'll be like renewable, solar cells or whatever. Probably 1 in 10 companies makes it a year. But the argument is I guess is pretty easy to make. The quantities of birds that they're talking about launching are mind-boggling, right? I mean, we're talking. I don't want to say 100,000, but that may be where it ends up. And then of course, if we look at this two-dimensionally, then we've got all these satellites in the same, polar plane. And that's really not true. I mean, you've got, hundreds of kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, whatever, that you can play with even in a straight geo constellation. So it's not like they're all, they're not like this. They're like this, right? So, and they are pretty tiny with respects to the size of the planet, the distance that they have to travel. So, man, I don't know, but you're right. It's either going to be paid for by the taxpayers, or somebody's going to create this business that everybody wants to invest in until they realize that the company isn't really a company. But hey, how long ago was it when we said, putting 10,000 little LEO satellites in orbit was even a deal? I mean, nobody believed it. Well, maybe some people. Arthur C. Clarke might have believed it, but right.
But nobody else did.
Yeah, well, people that have been doing this industry their whole life, and they know how hard it is, to get a geostationary satellite in place and working. How many of those did we lose, over the years? Satcom 3. I mean, satellites that had all this fanfare that now they're going to triple the size of the cable TV industry in one launch, and whoops, we lost. It's gone. It's like your 401k. It's gone, right? So, I don't know, but it's interesting, isn't it? That every time a milestone is achieved, it creates 10 more milestones, right? And who knows? Eventually, maybe technology catches up with it. I guess that's what's happened up to now, right?
Well, you would hope so. Technology seems to be changing all the time. Give it a few years, and we'll be talking about something entirely different.
Yeah, right. Well, another analogy is the modem industry, right? I mean, the modem trade. Back in the early days, it was BPSK, right? You could get basically 2 bits per hertz. Then they came out with QPSK, Then they came out with 8 PSK and 16 QAM. It's like like that was the best we could do at every milestone that was achieved by the modem folks, right? Then somebody came up, I think it was Mark Dangberg again, came up with this carrier overlap stuff. Well, let's take the two carriers and slap them on top of each other, and then we'll save 50% of the space segment. And sure enough, it worked. And then Applied Signal or somebody came out, and then they did another carrier and carrier that Comtech, promoted forever. The same deal, carrier on top of carrier. And you think, man, who would have ever thought you could do that, right? And now they're up to 256 APSK, whatever, right? I mean, you've achieved the max that physical science will allow you to do, like once a year. Then somebody like, oh, hey, I never thought about that, And now they're pumping so much information in a very efficient means in a limited amount of bandwidth on the satellite that what's the end? I mean, so far there has been no endpoint defined. Every year somebody comes up with some way to kick the can, right, and do something better. And I mean, hey,
well,
somebody will do it.
Tony, to wrap this up, I'm going to put you on the spot. 2 questions. What's the biggest challenge moving forward? And what's the thing that most excites you moving forward?
Let me start with the things that excites me the most. What excites me the most right now is deep space. I think it's deep space. The Artemis missions coming up. The communications they're putting in place. You flash back. I was in high school back in '69, I guess, when they did the moon landing, and everything that they did was very low resolution and kind of. But now it's going to be 4K, 8K. And they're going to need the pipes to be able to do this. And they're talking about putting satellites in orbit around the moon itself to relay stuff to the dark side. I think that's going to be very cool. We're doing some low X band, deep space kind of stuff right now, for a couple of customers, and the fact that Advantech kind of errs on the side of esoteric. This company's been around a long time. It's amassed an enormous amount of expertise, not to mention designs and whatever. So, man, we take on some crazy stuff. That I would say that I won't say that nobody else will do it, but most won't do it. It's that to me is very cool stuff. It's there's still some very interesting things that we can do with a power amplifier to facilitate some program that didn't exist a year or two ago. So I'm really into that. And what was the first question?
What's the biggest challenge moving forward you see on the horizon?
The biggest challenge right now, I think, is I'll say instability in the supply chain is really it really is a huge problem. I don't know what it's going to take to either get it back to the way it was, or just to make it where it works. Because I mean, it's a huge problem for us. And I talked to some of my competitor colleagues, in IBC show last year, and they're all facing the same thing we are. We all use the same parts, and man, I'll tell you what, customers don't want to hear, that the FET guys just all of a sudden, we're sitting here on the loading dock, waiting for a big supply of FETs to come in. Then we get a message to say, oh no, we had a problem. It's going to be 3 months. We had a wafer that's contaminated, so we got a whole production run ain't going to happen, and it's going to take us 3, 4, 5 months to recoup. Man, it's unbelievable how negatively impactful that is on the business. Now you look at delivery time now, stuff that we used to get on DigiKey or whatever, things that we could get in like 2 weeks, now maybe 6 months. You can't even imagine how detrimental that is just for if you're a publicly traded company and you have to rely on revenue recognition every month. Man, that's not to mention pissing customers off left and right. So whatever has to happen, I have no idea what that is, to fix all of that. That's the biggest concern that I have, that we have at the moment, I would say.
Tony, it's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for your thoughts today. That's great.